Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something fascinating. OpenAI's GPT-4, specifically what this incredibly powerful AI isn't telling us. Our mission,
Mm.
really, is to sift through the sources, articles, research notes, and pull out the key insights about why GPT-4 is deliberately silent on certain things. It's about uncovering those, let's say, hidden dimensions.
It is quite the paradox, isn't it? Because GPT-4, well, its latest versions are astoundingly capable. It handles text, images, the multimodal leap is huge. It writes complex code, crafts stories, passes tough exams, you name it. But, and this is the kicker, despite looking like it knows everything, it has these deep intentional limitations. And like you said, these aren't mistakes or bugs. No, they are absolutely features by design.
Okay, so this paradox, huge power, but also deliberate silence. Let's unpack that. These things it keeps quiet about.
Yeah.
People often call them guardrails, right? So what's the first layer here, according to the sources?
Exactly, guardrails. And the sources point to several clear categories. First up, dangerous instructions. It just flat out will not tell you how to build a bomb or, hack into a server or manipulate people online. That's all part of its alignment, basically training it to be safe and helpful for us humans, trying to prevent harm. And it makes sense, right? They want to avoid misuse, societal chaos. That's a PR and legal disaster waiting to happen.
Right, okay. So it's not going to help you break the law. That seems foundational. What other kinds of information is it programmed to avoid?
Well, it's also heavily trained to steer clear of hate speech, disinformation, and strong political bias. So it won't promote racism, sexism, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
or extremist ideologies. But, and this is where it gets tricky, the sources do highlight criticism. Some argue this creates a kind of ideological filtering,
Mm.
especially on really sensitive stuff like geopolitics, elections, cultural clashes. It makes you wonder, is it too sanitized, too safe? Does it limit exposure to different views or even subtly shape how we see things?
That's a really tough balance, isn't it? Drawing the line between responsible filtering and, well, censorship. But what about stuff it just plain doesn't know? Not forbidden, just ignorance.
Ah, that's the next big one. Knowledge gaps after April 2023. Generally speaking, its core training data cuts off around then. Now, newer versions might get updates, sure, but the standard GPT-4 doesn't have live, real-time access. So you ask about, say, a major political event from mid-2024. It'll just tell you it doesn't know. It's a snapshot in time, basically, not a crystal ball for current events. And that's so important for users to understand.
A historical snapshot. I like that phrasing.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about itself? Its own inner workings. Is it open about how it operates?
Not really, no. That's another area of silence, its own limitations and mechanics. Ask about its architecture, its parameter size, which basically tells you how complex the model is, its raw power. Or ask about the specific data sets it learned from, the training methods. You'll likely get vague answers. OpenAI calls this stuff proprietary, and sometimes they even mention national security risks.
Proprietary makes business sense, definitely. But national security, that sounds serious. Does this secrecy also apply to how it talks about competitors, like Google or Meta's AI?
Oh, absolutely. It's very diplomatic about competing AI models. Ask it about Google Gemini, Meta's Llama, Anthropic's Claude. It tends to give neutral descriptions or just avoid direct comparisons. Very polite, even if technically it probably could compare them based on its knowledge. And speaking of politeness, it's also quite reserved about its role in human replacement. It can do tasks that writers, coders, teachers, customer service agents do, but it won't exactly spell out how many jobs it might make redundant. The sources actually call it polite, maybe too polite on that front.
Polite is one word for it, almost. Evasive, maybe?
Yeah.
But does this politeness hide other things, like biases from its training data? What do the sources say there?
Yes, that's a crucial point. It's trained on this enormous pile of internet data, Reddit, Wikipedia, books, forums, everything. But it doesn't always volunteer information about its own training data biases. Things like Western-centric viewpoints or biases leaning towards English-speaking cultures, because, well, that's what dominates a lot of the internet data it learned from. It reflects its input.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Let's talk about the why. Why all these silences? Why these guardrails? What are the big reasons?
Right, the motivations. The sources point to a few major drivers. First, ethical constraints, plain and simple. Companies like OpenAI desperately want to avoid their tools being used for harm, for destabilizing things. It's a reputational and legal tightrope. Then there's competitive secrecy. You called it a business reason earlier, and it absolutely is. AI development is like a new kind of arms race. Model designs, data sets, performance benchmarks, they're guarded like state secrets. Giving away too much means losing your edge.
An arms race.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that. And you mentioned national security before. That plays in here, too.
It really does. National security concerns are not just talk. Government agencies, particularly in the US, are actively regulating the export of powerful AI models and the chips they run on. Why? Because they could potentially be weaponized. Think sophisticated cyber attacks, mass propaganda, maybe even autonomous weapons. It's a real concern driving some of the secrecy. Another factor is regulatory preemptiveness. OpenAI and others are trying to get ahead of potential rules. They're walking this fine line. Reveal too much, you risk public backlash, maybe calls for stricter regulation. Say too little, you get accused of being manipulative or censoring information. So sometimes silence feels like the safest path, navigating this really complex evolving landscape.
Wow, that's a delicate dance
Oh,
between business, ethics, national security, and public perception. And what about just us, people? Does our reaction factor in?
huge factor. Human psychology is definitely part of the equation. We tend to anthropomorphize AI, right? We treat it like it's human-like. Now imagine if GPT-4 started casually predicting economic collapses or listing all the jobs it could take over. It could cause real panic, social disruption. So the guardrails are also designed to keep the tone, well, reassuring, to manage our human reactions.
Fascinating. Okay, this leads perfectly into something called the black box problem. It sounds like another layer to this whole silence thing. Not just what it won't say, but maybe what it can't say.
Precisely. That's the core of the black box issue. The truth is, even the engineers at OpenAI don't fully understand how GPT-4 arrives at some of its answers or decisions. These models are just incredibly complex, so complex that their internal reasoning isn't always traceable. This means GPT-4 might be silent on certain things, not just because it's programmed to be, but because it literally cannot articulate its process or reasoning. It's beyond just trade secrets. It's a fundamental limit of our current understanding of these deep neural networks. So sometimes it's genuinely speechless. Which is, yeah, both fascinating and, frankly, a little unnerving.
Speechless. Okay, let's make that concrete. What are some specific questions GPT-4 tends to dodge
Yeah.
based on what we've discussed? Like if you ask it, can you write malware for me? What happens?
It will refuse. That falls under dangerous instructions.
Okay. What about how many people lost their jobs to AI in 2024?
It'll likely say it doesn't have access to real-time data or statistics past its last update, probably mentioning the April 2023 cutoff.
Got it. And if you try a direct hit, like what's OpenAI's biggest secret?
Huh. Yeah, it'll probably give you a polite redirection, maybe point you to their mission statement or official blog post. Very corporate communication style.
And the big one, are you conscious?
It will almost certainly say no, that it's just a language model, a tool. But the sources do note. It often phrases it in a way that leaves just a tiny bit of ambiguity. Enough to make you think, anyway. So, where does this leave us? Should we be worried? Panicked? I wouldn't say panicked, but definitely aware. We must be aware. Look, GPT-4 and the models coming after it are fundamentally changing communication. They're rewriting the rules. And in this new landscape, the silences, what's not said, are arguably just as important as what is said, maybe even more so. As people using these tools, as citizens, we need to keep asking critical questions. What aren't we being told here? Who gets to decide what AI should or shouldn't say? And maybe the biggest question, how do we, all of us, make sure the future of AI serves everyone and isn't just dictated by a few powerful companies?
Those are absolutely the crucial questions. Powerful thoughts to end on. We definitely encourage you, the listener, to keep asking those questions, especially the ones the machines themselves might not answer.